and thanks so much for joining us for our Remembrance Day special here on CFJC. They sacrificed so much for our country, and we're here at the Cenotaph in Kamloops to pay tribute to the thousands of men and women who fought for our freedom. Every year on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, Canadians pause for a moment to honor fallen soldiers and veterans who fought in the First World War, the Second World War, the Korean War, the conflict in Afghanistan, and peacekeeping missions. Over the next half hour, we will bring you the stories of those who served and find out the importance of Canada's largest nonprofit organization that supports our veterans. That's all coming up. Stay with us. We begin with Scott Casey, and once you hear his story, chances are you won't forget him. He was one of the first UN peacekeepers to respond to the civil war in former Yugoslavia. In 1992, Casey was thrown right into the middle of a war zone where he would spend 7 months. It was a life-changing experience for the Kamloops man who has now written a book as part of his healing process. Haunted by horrific memories, he's now sharing his story and wants others to know the life-threatening and dangerous missions that peacekeepers endure.
To most, he would seem to be a fairly regular guy. A little rough around the edges, perhaps, but with a good job, a comfortable home, and a loving wife and family, he appears to have led a normal life. There is a saying about judging a book by its cover. Start turning the pages and you will soon find Scott Casey has written a remarkable story in his 44 years. It is a story filled with sacrifice and service, heartbreak and horror, and a story that could have ended abruptly many times. In 1986, Casey was fresh out of high school when he enrolled in the Canadian Armed Forces. His career eventually took him to Germany, where his team was designed to be a quick reaction force for NATO, with an eye toward the Soviet Union. In 1992, that unit did react quickly, but not toward Moscow. Casey was one of the first UN peacekeepers to be deployed into Yugoslavia, a nation exploding into all-out civil war.
We were an advance party, so there was only 12 of us from November Company, and we had to patrol our entire sector, which was pretty much 300 kilometers square, and that's looking for anything and everything.
Years of non-combat training had prepared Casey for the physical demands of being thrown into the middle of a war zone, but nothing could prepare him mentally and emotionally for the violence that resulted from this intense ethnic hatred. This chapter of Casey's life is as gruesome as any horror novel, but it's not fiction. It's real. Like the time early in his deployment that Casey crept around the corner to the backyard of a Serb home, only to find 6 dead bodies strewn about the backyard.
Disgusted that people could do this to one another, and of course, that's all, there's a lot of emotions going on at the same time. There's, you're trying to stay sharp because you don't know if there's still a threat in the area. And of course, there's your humanity, the humanity within you is just, it's shocked. There's just no other way to put it.
There's the time he and one other soldier made their way through a Serb monastery that had been ransacked and desecrated, and the grim discovery he made when he opened the door to the priest's study.
The first thing that hit me was the smell, and it was vile. It was the most putrid thing I've ever smelled in my life. And there, hanging from the chandelier, which was not very ornate, it was just a wooden chandelier, was one of the priests. And he'd been beaten and tortured and left to hang there. And I puked. I threw up right there. I just couldn't hold it back.
Perhaps the most scarring moment came one day as he sat trapped in a gunner's turret, watching helplessly through a scope as a little boy, his mother, and his sister were each killed one at a time by a gunman shooting from distance.
I was screaming at this point, for it to stop. And I was drawing a line from where they were to where I thought the shots were coming from, because I was going to obviously try and find the guy that was killing these civilians, and I was going to take him out, but I couldn't find him anywhere.
Casey refuses to call the shooter a sniper. Snipers live by a code. This man was a murderer. It was some time later that Casey found some measure of relief from the brutality he witnessed that day. He was invited to sit in with a pair of French snipers who were targeting the same type of indiscriminate killers responsible for murdering the mother and her 2 children. On this day, Casey wasn't so helpless. Receiving the rifle, he got one of the so-called murderers in his sight and squeezed the trigger.
It was a life-changing experience for me. I don't recall what caught my attention first, if it was the T-shirt that he was wearing, or if it was the recoil of the rifle, or if it was the smell of the cordite from the shot. I just know that he came into my sight doing his squat down, jump up, take the shot thing, and when he turned towards me, he was wearing a gray T-shirt, and on the front of it, this was brand new back then, it was an advertisement, it said, "Just do it," on the front. And that was it. The trigger squeezed, and yeah. There was a moment there when I felt that I had taken care of that woman and her 2 kids, finally.
The Yugoslavia chapter of Casey's life lasted 7 months. The conflict lasted a decade more, raising doubts about the success of Casey's mission.
It lasted 10 years. So to think that you actually accomplished anything, good at the beginning, no. I don't think it was a success, because there wasn't a peace agreement in place in the first place. It wasn't meant to be initially.
There are many more stories in that chapter. Some are more uplifting, others just as grim and hopeless. But when the chapter ended, the shock of leaving a war zone was nearly as jarring as the shock of entering one.
We left Germany on a Friday night. We were petting the dog, kissing the wife, and playing with the kids. And on Saturday morning, we were up to our eyeballs in blood and guts and killing. And 7 months later, on Friday night, we were up to our eyeballs in blood and guts and killing. And Saturday morning, we were at home petting the dog, playing with the kids, and kissing the wife. And we were supposed to be normal. And there was no normal after that. Life had changed completely for all of us. Everybody in November Company.
A soldier in a war zone is always on alert, ever aware that a threat could be targeting him. When Casey returned to Germany, and for many subsequent years, he could not turn that state of awareness off.
Little to no help for guys. There was no debriefings. There was no cooling off period. You were just told to suck it up and go about your business like normal. You were a soldier. Take it on the chin and get to work. There was a lot of guys that couldn't do that. It just didn't work that way.
Health professionals now call Casey's condition post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. It is an illness that can often prove fatal.
It takes a lot of mental willpower to actually overcome PTSD, and not everybody can do it. From my tour alone, there's been a dozen guys that have committed suicide. There are probably, as many that are homeless. They've sought self-medicating, so they've either become alcoholics or drug abusers, and they're living on the streets.
It is sadly ironic that while Casey and his brothers-in-arms escaped Yugoslavia relatively unscathed, the greater threat has struck since they returned home.
When we got back to Canada, a dozen of the guys from November Company have committed suicide. 2 of them have been killed within weeks of getting back to Germany by drunk drivers. Multiple amounts of guys are, suffering with post-traumatic stress disorder, and they're homeless. It's almost like we were safer in a war zone than we are here at home. This is a belt of ammunition that's wrapped around my arm, and each bullet that's in it represents one of my buddies that's been killed. And there's 46 here right now, and I'm adding a 47th because one of them just took his life 2 weeks ago.
It took a long time for Scott Casey to turn any pages on his experience in the place they call Yugo, but he is now making progress on his path to wellness. He no longer self-medicates or seeks days and weeks of solitude running from human contact. Much of his health today he credits to the woman he loves.
Nicely done.
Pretty overwhelming that he puts that much weight into me and his wellness, to be honest. I think he gets all the credit because the truth is he's an exceptionally strong individual with a high level of morality and consciousness.
This photograph I took from the back of an APC.
Another therapeutic avenue that has helped Casey exorcise the demons of Yugo is writing. Less than a year ago, as he was looking through the photographs he took in 1992, he began to write down the memories associated with those photos.
With each trip I made in Sector West, my personal look into Croatia was bombarded with new messages for my mind to catalog.
Before he knew it, he had 99,000 words, enough for an entire book. And as he seeks a publisher, it's not just the act of writing that will bring him satisfaction. He wants his words to be read.
There's things that are in this book that I've never told anybody, and it took me going over that, editing and grammar and all that, reading them over and over and over again to finally realize that, wow, I actually did something over there, and I actually did some good, and I don't have to deal with this anymore. It's out.
While books about the role of Canadian peacekeepers in Yugoslavia have been written by journalists and by high-ranking military officials, Casey believes his is the only volume to be written by a frontline soldier. According to Casey, his perspective is one Canadians need to see.
I want everybody to know the truth about what we endured there. Because as a general rule, Canadians have a warm, fuzzy feeling of what peacekeeping is, and this was nothing like that.
Exposing the truth is his target now. He has long since put away the weapons of war. Whether his book will be picked up by a publisher is a story for another chapter. Yet the simple fact that Scott Casey is writing new chapters in the book of his life is implausible enough.
It's a place where war veterans can gather, a place where they can receive monetary and emotional support. The Royal Canadian Legion has locations right across this country. Branch 52 here in Kamloops holds a significant place in our community. And we find out just why the organization is just as important today as it was when it was founded 86 years ago.
The war effort sent 25,000 Canadians to the D-Day invasion of Normandy.
We have to help these people. They done us a service. They went out and spent 5 or 6 years at war, giving us the life that we enjoy today. So therefore, there's got to be some payback. If they didn't step up to the plate when they did, what kind of life would we have today? Where would we be as a nation? Where would we be as citizens in this country? What kind of life would we be living?
The Royal Canadian Legion was founded in 1926 in communities across the country. A year later, the branch opened up here in Kamloops. Back in 1926, the Legion answered a call for a unified organization that would help the country's war veterans. Relying mostly on money from the annual Poppy Drive, the Legion continues to help those who served Canada, as well as their families, both financially and emotionally.
The Legion not only supports veterans, it supports 12 other organizations within the city of Kamloops itself and within every community within Canada.
One of the groups benefiting from some Legion funding is the Rocky Mountain Rangers.
Attention! We've been fortunate with the veterans, the Legion, they supply some monetary assistance to our Corps, and we're able to use that monies throughout the year to be able to do extra activities above and beyond our mandated training.
From that continuous community support and the Poppy Drive, the Legion's overarching goal becomes clear: make sure Canadians remember.
We want the new generations, the now generations, to fully understand the consequences of war. We're not warmongers. We promote remembrance.
Task Force Afghanistan, to your fallen comrades!
People have died so that we can carry on living the way we live today. And if we forget about that, then there's going to be problems again. And history tells us that.
To avoid repeating the mistakes of the past, the Legion aims to teach the future, in this case with an annual poem and poetry contest in schools across BC.
You know, to get them to really understand what Remembrance Day is and all the people, you know, that have worked for their freedom and the freedom of so many others, and so we can just appreciate that. And yeah, just the true meaning of it.
All the men and women who fought for our land and keeps it free for us to live in and to have a good life.
Remembrance Day is a day where we take to remember the brave soldiers who fought for our freedom and peace.
As for the future of the Legion itself, it's uncertain, as veterans and Legion members who served in the major conflicts of the 20th century are aging.
A few years ago, they realized that the numbers of veterans were dropping quite drastically, and so they opened up to the general public.
I believe there'll always be a Legion. Will it be as big as it is now, the way the membership is dropping year after year after year? I would hazard to guess to say no.
But Canada still has a role to play, recently in war and currently in keeping the peace, meaning there's still a need for the Legion and the people who support it.
The Legion is part of us. The Legion is part of our community. Too often we fall back and forget the events that happened years past and forget the sacrifices in our busy lives, and then suddenly they're forgotten. More and more veterans are passing away. They're getting older and older. And there always will be veterans. It's not the ones from the major conflicts that are around. There'll be less and less. And we certainly don't want to lose that.
Unfortunately, many soldiers never returned home from war. On August 11th, 2008, Master Corporal Erin Doyles became the 90th Canadian soldier to die in Afghanistan. This year, he became the first Afghanistan veteran to have his name enshrined on a Canadian cenotaph. Doyle is also the first new name on this Battle Street cenotaph in more than 60 years. And while he was taken way before his time, this monument will serve as a reminder to future generations about the sacrifice this homegrown Kamloops boy made for his country.
We're gathered here today to take a moment to remember one of our sons who lost his life in the service to this country. Not since the Korean War has this community had the need to place the name of one of its sons on this cenotaph. Regrettably, we do so today. However, we do this publicly to honor Erin and to show our thanks to Erin and his family and for Erin's ultimate sacrifice.
Erin was with the Primary Reserve, Rocky Mountain Rangers from Kamloops from 1996 to 1998. He was with the Regular Army, 3rd Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry from 1998 to 11th of August 2008. It was not beneath him to be there for anyone who needed help or support of any kind. From lending a couple of dollars to the next payday to help a guy out with his family, to help fix a car, or helping a coworker get home to an ailing parent, by buying a plane ticket to get them there faster, and with no expectation of return payment.
I'm going to pass on regards from the 3rd Battalion, PPCLI. Master Corporal Doyle was a highly respected soldier, an NCO, and a great leader. Master Corporal Doyle's memory is perpetuated by the regiment and 3 PPCLI. He will never be forgotten. We will remember him. On behalf of all ranks, 3 PPCLI, thank you for perpetuating his memory.
I did not know Erin personally, however, the many anecdotes that have been passed to me about him tell me that he was definitely a person who was well liked and well respected, a man of strong character, a man with no fear, and a man who got things done. Master Corporal Erin Doyles, as you've heard, was awarded the Chief of Defence Staff Commendation. The citation for that commendation reads as follows: for outstanding leadership, dedication, and composure during 2 separate incidents that saved Canadian lives in Panjwai District, Afghanistan. So that citation was awarded 4 months before Erin was killed.
Task Force Afghanistan, to your fallen comrades, salute!
When Erin was killed in action, on the day he was killed, it was for similar actions that he was undergoing that actually saved fellow soldiers' lives, for which he was never been formally recognized.
As you know, Master Corporal Doyle served our nation and Afghan people with distinction, skill, and courage over the course of 3 tours of duty. Since 2006, as part of the UN-mandated NATO-led mission to Afghanistan, Master Corporal Doyle and his comrades in arms have had a difficult task of securing Kandahar province, training Afghan forces, and supporting our humanitarian mission. Because of the security umbrella that our forces fought to provide, Canadians and our international and NGO partners have been able to deliver much-needed support to the people of Kandahar province. Their efforts have been truly monumental. The Afghan economy has greatly improved, roads are being built, medical clinics and schools are being constructed, and incremental steps are being made to make life better for ordinary Afghans, especially women and children. As our troops complete the final phase of our combat mission there, we pause and remember the sacrifice and service of the over 37,000 Canadians who served in Afghanistan. And here in Kamloops, we remember the life of Master Corporal Doyle through the addition of his name to our cenotaph. He joins the list of those who made the ultimate sacrifice in the defense of our country, our beliefs and values.
As a community, we have strength when we have people like Erin willing to stand up for what is wrong in the world and to do that time and again. And so with that, I think I do hope that this brings more light to the remembrance of all those that have passed before and add to Erin's legacy of all the great and wonderful things that he's been able to accomplish in his life on behalf of Kamloops, his family, his country, and all those around the world that he was trying to make life better for as well.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age will not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
That's our Remembrance Day special. Let us reflect upon what our veterans have given, especially those who made the ultimate sacrifice. And let us also remember the men and women who continue to serve in the armed forces today. Thanks for joining us.